This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Hylar.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. Nin, we're on 43 tonight. Fires of Heaven 43.
This place, this day. And our symbol is the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai.
The next morning, Rand was up and dressed well before first light. In truth, he had not slept, and it had not been Aviendha who kept him awake. Not even after she began undressing before he could put out the lamps and channeled one alight again as soon as he did, chiding him that she was unable to see in the dark, even if he could. He made no reply. And hours later, had hardly noticed when she rose, a good hour before he did, dressed and left. He did not even think to wonder where she was going. The thoughts that had him staring up into the blackness still ran through his head. Men would die today. A great many men, even if everything went perfectly. Nothing he did now would change it. Today would run out according to the pattern, but over and over he mulled the decisions he had made since he first entered the waste. Could he have done something different? Something that would have avoided this day? This place? Next time, perhaps. The tasseled length of spear lay atop his sword belt, and scabbarded blade beside his blankets. There would be a next time, and one beyond that, and beyond again. While darkness still held, the chiefs came in a bunch, for a few final words, to report that their men were in position, and ready. Not that anything else was expected. Stone-faced as they were, some emotion showed. An odd mix, though, a skim of ebullience over somberness. Aram actually wore a slight smile. A good day to see the end of the Shaido, he said finally. He seemed to be walking on his toes. The light willing, Bale said, his head brushing the roof of the tent. We will wash the spears in Couladin's blood before sunfall. Bad luck to talk of what will be, Han muttered. The skim was very much thin on him, of course. Fate will decide. Rand nodded. The light send is that it does not decide that too many of our number dead. He wished his concern were only that few men should die, because men should not have their lives cut short, but there were many more days to come. He would need every spear to bring order to this side of the dragon wall. That was a bone between him and Couladin every bit as much as the rest. Life is a dream, Ruark told him, and Han and the others nodded agreement. Life was only a dream, and all dreams had to end. Aiel did not run toward death, yet they did not run from it, either. As they were departing, Bale paused. Are you certain of what you want the maidens to do? Sulin has been speaking to the wise ones. So that was what Mullane had been at Bale about. The way Ruark stopped to listen, he had been hearing from Amis on the subject too. Everyone else is doing what they are supposed to, without complaining, Bale. That was unfair, but this was no game. If the maidens want special consideration, Sulin can come to me, not go running to the wise ones. Had they been anything but Aiel, Ruark and Bale would have been shaking their heads as they left. Rand supposed each would get an earful from his wife, but they would have to live with it. If Fardar Esmai carried his honor, this time they would carry it where he wanted. To Rand's surprise, Lan appeared just as he was ready to go out himself. The warder's cloak hung down his back, disturbing the vision as it rippled with his movements. Is Moraine with you? Rand had expected Lan to be glued to her side. She is fretting in her tent. She cannot possibly heal even all of the worst hurt today. That was her choice of how to help. She could not use the one power as a weapon today, but she could heal. Waste always angers her. It angers us all, Rand snapped. His taking Egwene away probably upset her too, as far as he could tell. Egwene was not very good at healing on her own, but she could have aided Moraine. Well, he needed her to keep her promise. Tell Moraine if she needs help. Ask some of the wise ones who can channel. But few wise ones had any knowledge of healing. She can link with them and use their strength. He hesitated. Had Moraine ever spoken of linking to him? You didn't come here to tell me Moraine is brooding, he said irritably. It was difficult sometimes, keeping straight what had come from her, what from Asmodean, and what bubbled up from Luce Theron. I came to ask you why you've taken to wearing a sword again. Moraine asked already. Did she send? Lan's face did not change, but he cut in roughly. I want to know. You can make a sword from the power, or kill without, but suddenly you're wearing steel on your hip again. Why? Unconsciously, Rand ran one hand up the long hilt at his side. It is hardly fair to use the power that way, especially against someone who can't channel. I might as well fight a child. The warder stood silent for a time, studying him. You mean to kill Couladin yourself, he said at last in flat tones. That sword against his spears.
Everybody thought that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Moraine thought it was a bad idea. Lan thinks it's a bad idea. The maidens think it's a bad idea. Hell, even Matt thinks it's a bad idea.
Especially not with a sword, you idiot.
Don't go fight Couladin. You're too important.
You trying to get yourself killed? You know what happens if you get killed? Everyone dies. Yeah. Everyone. Not just their enemies, not just you, not just Couladin. Everyone. Everyone. Time dies if you die. Dude, chill back. Let the warriors fight. Go herd sheep or something. Way more useful than having him running around with a sharp piece of metal.
Maybe don't tie one hand behind your back. Go stand in a tower and watch the field. And do what you can do. Use your power. Use your actual power. And so I assume that's what Aviendha does in the morning, is gets up to join the rest of the maidens in their plot to basically force him to... Because originally his plan was to have them guard the tower, Egwene and Elaine, and anyone else he can get to fight in the battle and channel, and then keep that as far away from the battle as possible while he goes in to fight.
Right.
And he's like, no, you just have to obey your orders. Everybody else is doing it. And they're like, no, that's not fair. Their orders are to be in the fight. Our orders are to sit on our ass and do nothing.
Sulin would not have put up this big fight. She wouldn't be causing all these problems for him if he would just let her do her damn job, which is protect him. Like, all he would need to say is, like, okay, give me 100 maidens that are going to move with me through the battle. I want Couladin. The maidens will understand that. I want to get with him, cut me a path, and give, send 300 over here to stand near this tower. I know they'll hate it, but we have to protect our channelers. But he just wants to leave them all there. That's the problem. Sulin's offended, I would imagine.
It undercuts her whole purpose. It's like, you don't get to be what you're supposed to be. You don't get to fight. That's the breaking of the spear scene where she like puts her feet on the spears, and he says, what happened if you broke the third one? She's like, well, I have no honor. Maybe in the next life. But you've taken my honor away from me. Literally, she is at the verge of killing herself because he has dishonored them so much and taken away their purpose. As Metal Deter says, it's sexist bullshit. It's the idea that because they're women, they need to be protected. It's crazy, and she's confronting him with it, and he just doesn't want to see it in himself.
And Lan, straight up, as much as Lan ever yells anything, is kind of yelling at Rand in this scene after that. Lan says, you want him dead in particular? Okay. Then have him beheaded when he's taken, Lan said harshly. Set 100 men. 1,000 men, with no purpose in the battle, but to find him and take him. But don't be such a fool that you think you're going to walk in there and cut your way through all the way to the head of this whole army. And you're going to do that by yourself. Come on.
And the only thing is, if Rand's seeking Couladin and Couladin's seeking Rand, there's a good chance they will find each other at some point in the battle.
Yeah.
Especially with Tairen twisting.
And Lynn even says you're good with that sword, really good with it. But why make the stupid gamble?
Right, but you've been training for a year and a half. This dude has been training his entire life.
Lan also makes that point, as well as every other Aielman in this.
Right. Yeah, you're good, but, it only takes one, as they say, one arrow, one spear thrust, one lightning bolt.
Right.
And we've lost the last battle.
You might walk right past a fresh Aielman just raised to warrior yesterday, and he might shoot you in the back, pop out from a hole, dead. And then the Dragon Reborn is dead, and time itself dies. Just saying. This is important. You're important. Rand won't listen. He's going to do what he wants to do, unless they physically make him, which they do.
That definitely. They physically surround him and force him to either attack them or do what they want. I like the symbolism of him leaving the Shanchan spear in the tent. It's like, that's a worry. He's just not even thinking about the Shanchan today. Today is about the Aiel.
Today is about killing Couladin in particular.
I just got to say one thing. When you said it's about killing Couladin, I had to think like it's about dispersing the Shaido. And when I say dispersing the Shaido, that immediately makes me think of when Rand orders Tame in Dumai's Wells. Taim, disperse. Or what does he say? Scatter the Shaido or break the Shaido. I forget exactly what the term is, but such a good order. And then that leads to Ashaman kill. But it's funny just to see that sort of, in a lot of ways, this battle is really just to kill Couladin, whereas that battle really is to destroy the Shaido and their ability to make war.
Yeah, in any significant way, anyway. Rand and Lan are standing there kind of low-level arguing for a minute or two, and finally Rand says, "Come, the Aiel will finish it without us if we stand here much longer." When he ducked outside, only a few stars remained, and a thin brightness outlined the eastern horizon sharply. That was not why he stopped, though, and Lan with him. Maidens made a ring around the tent, shoulder to shoulder, facing inward, a thick ring that spread down the dark-shrouded slopes. Cadensor-clad women jammed so a mouse could not have slipped through. Cairhien was nowhere in sight, though Gai'Shane had been ordered to have him saddled and waiting. Not maidens alone. 2 women in the front rank wore bulky skirts and pale blouses, their hair bound back with folded scarves. It was too black yet to discern faces with any certainty, but there was something in the shape of those 2, in their folded-arm stance, that named them Egwene and Aviendha. Sulin stepped forward before he could open his mouth to ask what they were up to. "We have come to escort the Cairhien to the tower with Egwene Sedai and Aviendha." "Who put you up to this?" Rand demanded. One glance at Lan showed it had not been him. Even in the darkness, the warder looked startled. For a moment, anyway, his head jerking up. Nothing surprised Lan for long. "Egwene is supposed to be on her way to the tower now, and the maidens are supposed to be there to guard her. What she will do today is very important. She must be protected while she does it." "We will protect her." Sulin's voice was as flat as a planed board. "And the Cairhien who gave his honor to the Fardaris Mai to carry." A murmur of approval rippled through the maidens. "It only makes sense, Rand," Egwene said from where she stood. "If one using the power as a weapon will make the battle shorter, 3 will shorten it even more. And you are stronger than Aviendha and me, together." She did not sound as if she liked saying the last. Aviendha said nothing, but the way she stood was eloquent. "This is ridiculous," Rand scowled. "Let me through, and go to your assigned place." Sulin did not budge. "Fardaris Mai carries the honor of the Cairhien," she said calmly, and the others took it up. No louder, but from so many women's voices, it made a high rumble. "Fardaris Mai carries the honor of the Cairhien. Fardaris Mai carries the honor of the Cairhien." "I said let me through," he demanded, the instant the sounds died, as if he had told them to begin again. They did. "Fardaris Mai carries the honor of the Cairhien. Fardaris Mai carries the honor of the Cairhien." Sulin just stood there looking at him. After a moment, Land leaned close to murmur dryly, "A woman is no less a woman because she carries a spear. Did you ever meet one who could be diverted from anything she really wanted? Give over, or we will stand here all day while you argue, and they chant at you." The warder hesitated, then added, "Besides which, it does make sense." Egwene opened her mouth as the litany fell off once more, but Aviendha put a hand on her arm and whispered a few words, and Egwene said nothing. He knew what she had intended to say, though. She had been about to tell him that he was a stubborn, foolish woolhead or some such. The trouble was that he was beginning to feel like one. It did make sense for him to go to the tower. He had nothing to do elsewhere. The battle was in the hands of the chiefs and fate now, and he would be of more use channeling than riding around hoping to meet with Couladin. If being Tairen could pull Couladin to him, it could draw him to the tower as easily as anywhere else. Not that he would have much chance of seeing the man, not after ordering every last maiden to defend the tower, but how to back down and retain a scrap of dignity after blustering left, right, and center. I like to imagine he takes a moment at this point and then says, "I have decided I can do the most good from the tower," he said, his face going hot. "As the Cairhien commands," Sulin replied without a hint of mockery, just as if it has been his idea from the first. Lan nodded, then slipped away, the maidens making narrow room for him.
You know, I can translate Far Dara's Mai carries the honor of the Cairhien. It translates to the Dragon Reborn is a fucking idiot. The Dragon Reborn is a fucking idiot. The Dragon Reborn is a fucking idiot.
Yes. The Dragon Reborn is a stubborn baby.
And they just chant that at him.
When you're done throwing your tantrum, we can get back to playing. But I wanted to point out to everyone that as Rand begins to walk toward now the tower, where he has decided to go, I put air quotes around that.
I have decided I can do the most good for
as the Cairhien commands.
Yes,
the maidens have obviously been instructed to open a narrow pathway for Rand to walk through them, and as he walks through it, they close it behind him. He can't turn back. He can't go anywhere they don't want him to go. There's nowhere to run. There is no way to run.
They're hurting him by just like using their bodies to force him in one direction. It's kind of like when they took over the building he chose and called it the Hold of the Maidens. They're like, yeah, you can only go up, Rand, and you can't escape from us. You can just go higher in the building.
They're like, yeah, sure. You can have the floor right above us. And each day they move onto the floor that he's on. And he has to move up to the next one.
Yep.
Like, God damn it! Pretty soon I'm going to be on the
like
roof.
Chasing him all the way up, floor by floor. I mean, part of that was I think more and more maidens were coming into the building, and they needed the space, but also
this is one of those moments, particularly with Rand and the maidens in the series, where I just want to yell at Rand and be like, "Just listen to them. They know way more about what they're doing than you do. Listen. Shut up. You don't know anything."
I do kind of love the whole relationship, though, between the maidens and Rand, and how they both have goals and they struggle to protect each other, and there is some real affection on both sides. It bugs me a little bit that it's based in they're women, I can't have them be hurt issue. I wish it was more they're the people who are supposed to protect me, so I need to protect them. Like, I wish it was more from that, like, they are close to me. They're the ones who have decided they carry my honor. I should honor them by protecting them. That's the right way to... Yeah. That's where that comes from. Not from, oh, they're women, I don't want them to get hurt. And so I'm going to headcanon that that's really what's going on.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you're just worried about preserving the Aiel, like, there are plenty of Aiel women who didn't march to war, who are at home in the waste. Like, they're not all gone. They're not all going to die. These are warriors. You can't set them to babysitting, or they'll kick your ass. Which is also what happens later.
They beat the shit out of him.
He deserves it.
It's one of the worst beatdowns he gets in the whole series.
You're probably right.
Like, seriously. Like, he takes more physical damage from that. Like, other than actually being...
Sort of actually stabbing him.
Injured. Yeah. Short of losing his hand and, like... But of the fights he gets into that he loses, I don't think he comes out of one.
I don't think he even hits one. They move fast and in a force, in a group. And then they...
Right. And he lets them do. He doesn't fight back at all. He entirely just lets them beat him.
I think this happened several times, but on one of them, the group of maidens, like, rushes into whatever room he's in, and they pull their shirt over his face, and then just, like, pound on him. So he can't see. He can't see anything. They're just beating the hell out of him. That's the one. Is that the only time they do that? I almost want to say there's...
I think that's the only time they, like, really beat the crap out of him. There's the whole thing with Sulin and the breaking of the spears, which is a very similar scene, just instead she's, like, offering to off herself rather than beating the crap out of him. But I think those are the only two scenes.
Oh my god, they're so good at what they do. Like, it's like spending a ton of money to hire a super experienced candidate and then set them in a room to do nothing. Why? Why'd you do all that then? Why
hire a programmer and don't give him a computer?
Yeah.
Hire a cook and don't give him any food?
It's pointless. But also, I feel like this is I don't want to say that this is a dumb plot arc in the series. It's an interesting problem that I feel like could come up today easily. If I was suddenly in command of a giant army, I'd think that I would have some reservations about sending people to their death. Whether they be men or women. But, I live in a different time also.
It's an important subplot for Rand's character and character growth and his relationship with Aviendha and women in general and women and warriors. And really, I mean, if you think about it, a big part of what he has to do in the last battle is release his guilt for not only the women, but for everybody. And it really does start with the maidens. This idea that what they're trying to teach him this entire time is they can be heroes too. And that's a lesson that he doesn't really learn well until the last battle. While it's, yes, not the most important subplot, it might be making one of the most important points of the book.
Yeah, that we're all in this together. Can't do it without your friends, Rand. And the men can't do it alone. We tried that. Didn't work. Backfired real bad.
Jordan loves giving examples over and over and over again of women and men working separate, and it fails. Working together, it succeeds.
Yeah. I feel like I want to sum that up by saying it's good writing when you get angry at the characters. It's evoking emotion. Rand, you idiot. Sulin is an accomplished general. Let her be a general. I feel like it's highlighted really well also at the end of the last chapter, and the Aiel may or may not know about these techniques, but Matt is talking about undermining the walls using literal miners, which is where the term undermine comes from. And Matt walks away, and, Lan gives him his little report, and Rand's like, what the hell would we need miners for? Well, forget it. Not important right now. He has no idea what he's doing. I feel like your best asset in that situation is to defer to the people who do. Like, listen to a bunch of their opinions, put that together, and then you've probably made a really good decision, whether or not you know what you're talking about, because you collected what a bunch of experts think. Use them. They know things you don't.
I kind of love the parallel, though, between Rand and Matt with they're both kind of struggling with memories that are seeping through from other lives. When Rand's like, I could know. Part of me knows what's going on. And I love that here he's using very much I pronouns.
When he hears Lews Therin.
It's before that, though, where he's contemplating how he can't believe Matt has all these memories. It might even be in the last chapter, which is probably why I'm not finding it, where he's contemplating all these memories that Matt has, and he's like, I don't know anything. I'm not a general. And then he's like, but part of me says I was a general for hundreds of years, and I could know all of this stuff. All I have to do is embrace those memories.
That is kind of interesting, because it's really what Matt has to do as well. Like, you're in this situation. You got to stop fighting against reality. Accept reality and operate within it. Stop trying to work within a world of shoulds and should nots. As soon as we're talking about a world which should or should not, we're talking about a fantasy world that we just made up. We're not talking about the real world anymore. Should and should not, whatever you think, that it doesn't matter. It's not, if it doesn't reflect reality, well, it's good to have philosophies about how things probably ought to be, but you've got to work with what you have where you are. You can't start working from the future.
And fantasy worlds are interesting ways to process what ifs and to say, like, hey, what if the world was like this? What would be the right thing to do? Let's change reality so that these circumstances are different than what you and I would face in our normal day.
Absolutely.
And then ask, what is the right thing to do in this situation?
Yeah, and from where you are, like, I think that we should all have a good, solid moral philosophy of what should or should not be, but then we have to take that philosophy, understand that we live in the reality that we live in, that we don't live in the land of shoulds. We live mainly in the land of should not be. But we have to fix it. It's on us to fix it. So you have to first acknowledge the reality that you exist in, and then start from there. You can't begin.
So what you're saying is the last battle is a series of trolley problems in philosophy, where it's like you just have to choose between two bad outcomes over and over and over again.
That's the burden of a leader of any large nation. You have to make these hard decisions where, lesser of two evils and all that. You've got to, how do you take the first step toward the land of should be's? What can you do today, now? I guess I'm just trying to make the point that it doesn't do any good for Rand to sit in his armchair and say, well, women should be protected. That's not the world you live in, buddy.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't help.
They get on top of the platform, and Rand is looking out at the surrounding land.
He's using the scope, right?
Yeah, the three are Rand, Egwene, and Aviendha.
And we talked about this as just a simple telescope, 2 pieces of glass just held apart by a tube. The very simplest of magnification.
Yeah, probably.
Probably gets you like 5x. Maybe not huge, but enough to make a difference, especially when all you have to do is see. And then they start to summon the storm, which I gotta think is going to be a particularly effective weapon against Aiel, who have never seen rain.
Yeah, we move to Matt's perspective right after this. The view from the platform was magnificent, even to the naked eye. The land spreading out in wooded hills. The trees were thick enough to hide the Aiel moving toward Cairhien. Most would already be in position. But dawn cast the city itself in a golden light. A quick scan through one of the looking glasses showed the barren hills along the river, placid and seemingly empty of life. That would change, soon enough. The Shaido were there, if concealed, for now. They would not remain concealed when he began to direct... what? Not balefire. Whatever he did, it had to unnerve the Shaido as much as possible, before his Aiel attacked. Egwene and Aviendha had been taking turns looking through the other long tube, with pauses for quiet discussion, but now they were simply talking softly. Exchanging nods finally, they moved closer to the railing, and stood with their hands on the rough-hewn timber, staring down toward Cairhien. Goosebumps suddenly dotted his skin. One of them was channeling, maybe both. It was the wind that he noticed first, blowing toward the city. Not a breeze, the first real wind he had felt in this country, and clouds were beginning to form above Cairhien, heaviest to the south, growing thicker and blacker as he watched, roiling. Only there, over Cairhien and the Shaido, everywhere else, as far as he could see, the sky was a clear blue, with only a few high, thin white wisps. Yet thunder rolled, long and solid. Suddenly, lightning stabbed down, a jagged silver streak that rent a hilltop below the city. Before the crack of the first bolt reached the tower, 2 more crackled earthward. Wild forks danced across the sky, but those single lances of brilliant white struck with the regularity of a heartbeat. Abruptly, ground exploded where no lightning had fallen, fountaining 50 feet, then again somewhere else, and again. Rand had no idea which one woman was doing what, but they certainly looked set to harrow the Shaido out. Time to do his bit, or stand watching. Reaching out, he seized Saidin. Icy fire scoured the inside of the void that surrounded what was Rand al'Thor. Coldly, he ignored the oily filth seeping into him from the taint, juggled wild torrents of power that threatened to engulf him. At this distance, there were limits to what he could do. In fact, it was about as far as he could do anything, really, without Angrial or Sa-Angrial. Very likely, that was why the women were channeling one lightning bolt at a time, one explosion. If he was at his boundary, they must be stretching theirs. A memory slid across the emptiness. Not his. Lews Theron's. For once, he did not care. In an instant he channeled, and a ball of fire enveloped the top of a hill, nearly 5 miles away, a churning mass of pale yellow flame. When it faded, he could see without the looking-glass that the hill was lower now, and black at the crest, seemingly melted.
Okay, overkill much. Jesus.
Between the 3 of them, there might be no need for clans to fight Couladin at all. Ilyana, my love, forgive me. The void trembled. For an instant, Rand teetered on the brink of destruction. Waves of the one power crashed through him in a froth of fear. The taint seemed to solidify around his heart, a reeking stone. Clutching the rail until his knuckles ached, he forced himself back to calmness, forced the emptiness to hold. Thereafter, he refused to listen to the thoughts in his head. Instead, he concentrated everything on channeling, on methodically searing one hill after another. What I want to say, or what I thought after I read this little portion, is, well, 2 possibilities. One, Aviendha is controlling the storm while Egwene blows holes through the earth from below. Or 2, Aviendha and Egwene linked, discussed what they were going to do, and Egwene is leading the flows. It's one of those 2 things.
I don't believe they're linked.
No? I thought that was kind of a long shot. Neither of them have done it much, if ever.
I think more likely, haven't they trained with the sea folk yet?
No.
That's later, right?
Yeah. Elaine picked up a couple of things, I think.
Did she share it?
She could have. But what made me think that it was questionable that Egwene was the one doing it is that her specialty is earth. And it just seemed to me that it might make sense for the 2 women stand together and discuss quietly what they're going to do. What would unnerve the Aiel? Well, a big storm in the sky, right? They never see that.
Right.
Then, so we'll start this crazy storm that attacks from above, and then, once they're starting to feel nervous, the ground beneath them will also begin exploding. That's a good plan. They're doing it. They're doing a good job between the 2 of them.
It's a good point. I think Egwene's definitely doing the earth. Aviendha mostly has shown a propensity for fire, and we don't see a lot of that. Maybe she's probably doing the lightning because she is...
Isn't lightning is a fire and air thing, right?
Right. So I would think that would be Aviendha.
If I remember correctly, Egwene's no good with weather either. She can do it. She's strong. She can try, but she just doesn't have the finesse with it that a lot of other women do. What she's really good at is...
I always imagine they were working together to bring in the clouds. That they sort of worked together to set up the circumstances.
That's kind of what I thought.
And then once the circumstances were set up, Aviendha uses lightning to attack, and Egwene uses...
That's more or less what I was thinking, yeah. That they kind of work together to start this big storm. Because at first, neither appears to do anything from Rand's perspective. They're talking, they're quiet, they have their little strategy, and then this storm starts building in the sky, and they're both just standing there with their white-knuckled grip on the railing, right? The 2 girls, until the lightning starts to strike. And then after the lightning strikes, the ground starts to explode as well. So it kind of seems like they're working together, at least in the beginning.
And then they are just sort of taking turns attacking.
Yeah. And Rand is obviously, has an affinity for fire as well.
Yes.
He's the one nuking the hilltops, which is...
Like I said, overkill.
How I thought of it. Like a tactical nuclear weapon. Just enveloping these huge hilltops and melting them down. Like if there was anyone hiding anywhere, you couldn't bury yourself deep enough to not be roasted in that.
He's killing hundreds of people with each of those attacks. Maybe. Gotta be. Yeah. The only other time we see someone take out a hill is during the cleansing, when they're like in circles with Angreal. With Deshiva was basically, he showed up, and remember the Dark Friend... She did the same thing. She turned Deshiva and the whole hilltop he was on into a fireball to kill him. And she had a massive Angreal on her, and is one of the most powerful women who have ever... she was like above Nynaeve level strength.
Olivia?
Yes. Yeah, Olivia was fighting in that battle to protect Rand during the cleansing.
Olivia was Shan-Chan, right?
I think so. I know she's a Dark Friend, but I can't remember. I think she was a Shan-Chan Dark Friend.
Nin says Elsa.
Oh, Elsa. I get those 2 confused. I get Elsa and Olivia confused.
Olivia was good. Elsa Penfell.
Elsa was the one who was evil. Okay. But that was always ironic because freaking Deshiva, the Forsaken, gets fucking nuked by Dark Friend. Supposedly someone who's on his side. And she's just like, oh, well, and she knew he was a Dark Friend, but she didn't realize he was a Forsaken, and she thinks to herself, well, if he was a Forsaken, I wouldn't do this. But he's not a Forsaken. He's just a Shiva. He's just a Dark Friend in the Black Tower. Oh, and that's a good point, that Varen also put Eliza under compulsion to help Rand. So she has to justify in her own mind why she has to help him. So Olivia's going to help him die, but she's good. Elsa is a Dark Friend under compulsion from Varen, coming up with the motivation to help him. That's right. Thanks for getting that straight in my head again, guys. And then we get... maybe the first italic quotes true LTT quote, which is going to start a little bit of an argument here.
What's that?
He has, up to this point, taken the memories that have come from Lewis Theron Telamon, his previous self, himself in a previous life, right? Not a separate personality, not a different person. His memories have come forward, and he's taken those in.
And used them.
And he used them. And he's going insane, and he's getting these memories, and he gets this italic, Ileana, my love, forgive me. And this is where he starts to sequester his madness into another personality, into a separate personality. And he names that alternate personality in his head Lewis Theron Telamon. That's head LTT. But that's his insanity.
The taint breaking down barriers. The memories are his own.
The memories are his own. And he's had those, and he's dealt with them as his own up to this point. But now he's going insane.
Yeah.
And the next line after this, right after Ileana, my love, is the taint seemed to solidify around his heart, a reeking stone. And that, to me, is really saying, hey, madness has really set in.
Yeah.
And part of that madness is to create a persona where he's putting in all of his anger, all of his hate, all of his grief, and all of the memories coming across the barrier.
Yeah, I almost feel like I should just say, I feel like all of you, at least everybody here right now, probably already knows what me and Seth's theory on Rand's madness, that Lewis Theron is not a separate person. He can't be, right? Lewis Theron is Rand. They have the same soul, so they're the same person. So you can't... Lewis Theron never does anything. He doesn't think, this isn't another person in Rand's head. This is Rand in Rand's head. But because of the taint breaks down barriers and corrodes everything, that what the barrier that's normally there that prevents you from remembering everything that happened in your last life is breaking down for Rand. And that's how his madness manifests.
People are asking about, what about when he takes control?
Still Rand.
Still Rand. Because you can have freaking mind with multiple personalities in it. And you can have fights. You can actually, and what those fights represent is Rand literally losing control of himself to his madness, right? There's that point where Semirog says the descent into terminal madness can be abrupt. So what's been going on this whole time is Rand is getting more and more and more insane, and he's sequestering it into the LTT personality, and that is a multiple personality thing. And and if he ever gave into it, it would take control of him, and he would become LTT. LTT would take over Rand, but that would just be an insane aspect of Rand's own mind.
Right.
And Rand would be then insane.
Rand repeats it to himself over and over that those crazy thoughts, that's not me. That's the crazy guy that lives inside of my head. That's where the crazy thoughts come from. I'm sane, but the crazy man that lives inside my head, he's got to be kept at bay, because who knows what he'll do. Does this not sound crazy? I mean...
But it's actually Rand who's insane. The voices in my head are crazy. I'm not crazy. You have voices in your head. That means you're crazy.
Dude. No, there's not a crazy person
and they're not
inside
real.
of your head.
No.
You're crazy.
No, that's just you being crazy. Yeah.
I think we covered that. But like I said, we've gone over this a million times. Every time Rand does something questionable, it always kind of comes up like, is this it? Is this it yet?
But this is really it. This is absolutely, without a doubt, head LTT talking in Rand's head.
Now it's obvious. And this is right where Rand, the first time he says or thinks to himself, a memory slid across the emptiness. Not his, Lewis Theron's. But he didn't care.
And he's made that difference before. Any memory that comes from Age of Legends, he knows is Lewis Theron's.
But
it's also his, because he is Lewis Theron.
Lewis Theron is dead. And Lewis Theron's soul doesn't exist somewhere outside of Rand. Rand is the same soul. The dragon, reborn.
Devoka, I guess what I'd argue with you is Rand has no memories that aren't his own. All of those memories are his own. Some just happen to be from a previous life. It doesn't mean he didn't experience that. And he's been experiencing those memories long before LTT, this other personality, came around. And Matt's a great example of someone who can gain memories, but not gain a separate personality.
And we see this with Birgitta as well, who when she first comes to the world from Tairen Riad, at least in this timeline, she initially remembers all of her lives.
Yeah.
But as she...
And she doesn't have Mirren in her head, one of her former existences, telling her, like, hey, this is what you remember. Like, there's no alternate personality in Brigitta's head. She just remembers all her lives.
Right. But as she spends more and more time in the real world, that barrier begins to work in the way it's supposed to, for whatever reason. This is the way the mechanics work, that once you're reborn, you don't remember what happened before. You're just back doing it again. Well, because of her special circumstances, she's born, quote-unquote, into the world as a fully grown person, remembering everything she's ever done in every life. But that starts to fade because she has to start operating within the rules of the world. So after, it's really just some months, it starts to fade. Maybe a year, but it can't be more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said that there's about 6 months before the last battle at this point, and she just got pulled out.
The memories start to fade within months.
And probably within a year, they're completely gone.
In the same way, Rand is kind of almost like an equal opposite example, where he is born in a regular way as a baby, not remembering anything of what happened in his previous lives. But because of the way the taint works, it starts to break down those barriers. He is quite lucky that the madness works in that way on him, rather than, just the shadows changing into spiders, like one of the Ashamen has that hallucination all of the time. That's a totally useless insanity. Doesn't help you at all. Whereas Rand's, although it does drive him quite mad, for lack of a better term, it's also quite useful.
I think it can be explained by the taint breaking down barriers in your mind.
Absolutely. And
in most people, when you break down barriers in your mind, it makes you see shadows as spiders or fades, or makes you, in Rand's case, one of the barriers it breaks down is this fantastical barrier between his current life and his previous life. One of the other barriers it breaks down, it creates this alternate personality in his head. He can't, these memories he can't see as his own, even though they are his own. As I think Metal Deter was saying it, in schizophrenia, the thoughts are missing a neural code that tells you it's your own thought. So you can actually have thoughts in your head and think it's somebody else thinking those things. And that's what Rand's doing.
I'm nodding. Standing well back into what tree line there was on the crest, Matt held Pips's nose under his arm so the gelding would not whicker as he watched 1,000 or so Aiel slanting toward him across the hills from the south. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, stretching long, rippling shadows to one side of the trotting mass. The night's warmth was already beginning to give way to the heat of day. The air would swelter once the sun reached any height. He was already beginning to sweat. The Aiel did not see him yet, but he had few doubts that they would if he waited there much longer. It hardly mattered that they very nearly had to be Rand's men. If Couladin had men to the south, the day was going to get very interesting for those stupid enough to be in the middle of the fighting. Hardly mattered, because he was not going to run the risk of letting them see him. He had already come too close to an arrow this morning for that kind of carelessness. Absently, he fingered the neat slice across the shoulder of his coat. Good shooting, at a moving target, only half seen through the trees. He could have admired it more had he not been the target. Without taking his eyes from the approaching Aiel, he carefully backed Pips deeper into the sparse thicket. If they saw him, and picked up their pace, he wanted to know. People said the Aiel could run down a man on horseback, and he meant to have a good lead if they tried. Not until the trees hid them from him did he quicken his own step, leading Pips onto the reverse slope before mounting and turning west. A man could not be too careful if he wanted to stay alive on this day and this ground. He muttered to himself as he rode, hat pulled low to shade his face, and black-hafted spear across his pommel. West. Again. The day had begun so well. A good 2 hours before first light, When Melindra had gone off to some meeting of the maidens, thinking him asleep, she had not glanced at him as she stalked out, muttering half under her breath about Randall Thor and honor and Fardaris Mai above all. She sounded as if she were arguing with herself, but frankly, he did not care whether she wanted to pickle Rand or stew him. Before she was a minute out of the tent, he was stuffing his saddlebags. No one had so much as looked at him twice while he saddled Pips and ghosted away to the south. A good beginning. Only, he had not counted on columns of the Tardad, and Tomanel, and nearly every other bloody clan sweeping around to the south. No consolation that it was very close to what he had babbled to Lan. He wanted to go south, and those Aiel had forced him toward the Alguenya, toward where the fighting would be. Yep, with Melindra, it's always a dark friend alert.
The Mat claims the pattern forced him to do this, and yet he puts himself in the perfect position to be herded into the situation in the scenario that he just laid out for Lan.
Mm-hmm.
Which meant he knew it was going to happen. Which means he put himself in the middle of that battle deliberately. It was no Taveran twisting. Nothing forced him to it.
No. He wants to be there.
He wants to be there. Unreliable narrator.
I liked this little moment in about a paragraph. A flicker of movement caught his eye, well ahead of the column below. He would not have seen it, except for being so high. None of the riders could have, certainly. Digging his small looking-glass from his saddlebags, Kin Tavir liked to dice. He peered toward what he had seen. I just liked that little little thing there. Matt saw those telescopes, although he doesn't have a word for them. Looking glass, I think is what he calls it. And then he goes and seeks out this Kin Tavir, and he's like, hey man, you like to play dice? Because I really want one of those little looking glasses.
And I've got all this gold that you can have for free if you win.
If you can win.
All you have to do is outdice me. And when Matt, the devil, asks you to dice,
you run.
He's got the Dark One's luck.
Actually, I'm going to continue reading from where I just left off, because this is important for setting up what's about to happen. Picks up the looking glass, that is what he calls it. He peered toward what he had seen and whistled softly through his teeth. Aiel, at least as many as the men in the valley. And, if they were not Cooladins, they meant to give a name day surprise, for they were lying low among the dying bushes and dead leaves. I kind of want to clarify that, because I reread that sentence like 4 times before I actually understood. What Matt is saying is, if these men aren't Cooladin's men, then they're waiting for their buddy to run out of the bushes with cakes and cookies.
Right. That's
because they're really trying to hide. That's what he's saying.
I'd also like to point out, just from the whole telescope thing, Matt really likes new technology, and he very quickly takes advantage of it in a battle plan. Telescopes, cranks for crossbows, and cannons.
You took that word right out of my mind, but whenever Matt identifies a strategic advantage, he goes like, what is this, a cannon? Like you can shoot explosive things at Trollocs? I want a bunch of those. We're going to need a lot. We're going to need a lot of those things.
Oh, what is this, a crank that can make my crossbowman fire 4 times as fast? Yeah, start making as many as you can now. Just go, yeah.
People are trying to kill me all the time. Need every advantage I can get. And he's smart to do it. I mean...
Yeah. And he's like, hey, I have this huge force of trained fighters, but I have this even bigger force of untrained fighters. If I can teach them to use a crossbow, which only takes a couple of weeks, they're actually going to be useful in battle.
Yeah. And then if we can take those crossbows and make them fire 4 times faster, 1,000 men can fire, thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds every minute. Try charging that. You don't even need pikemen to defend them, hardly.
When Greed discovers, he's like, oh, that's really all you had this whole time. And Matt's like, I had everything I needed.
Superior technology? Yes. For a moment, he drummed his fingers on his thigh. Shortly, there were going to be some corpses down there, and not many of them would be Aiel. He sees the small contingent, or smallish contingent compared to any group of Aiel, on this battlefield of Cairhien and Tairens in various, and we've gone over the descriptions over the last few episodes, but some of them are foot, some of them are mounted. and they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So Matt moves in, and he's like, oh, damn it. I've got to go warn him. So he moves Pips down there fast, and he runs his horse right along the line of marching soldiers until he gets to the front.
He's basically stealing these soldiers from Weramon. I do kind of like the fact that Weramon assembles this group that becomes the Band of the Red Hand for Matt. He's just like, oh, thanks. Yeah, I'll take that. You don't need that anymore, you moron.
Yeah, and they range from, I believe in Matt's words, some little lordlings who have been in nothing worse than a tavern brawl, to some of these Cairhienin, I believe they're Cairhienin pikemen, or at least a group of pikemen led by a Cairhienin, who are like clearly grizzled veterans. So this group runs the gamut, from experienced soldiers to men only experienced at command, who have never seen real combat.
There's actually a group that gets slaughtered, and Matt's like, well, good riddance to them. They should have followed my orders. And it's not the Cairhienin pikemen, because it's the horsemen who are like, they charge in.
But okay, so Matt shows up at the front of the column, and I was talking about this in the last episode, when immediately Matt's like, where's Weramon? The Lord Dragon sent him back to Tyr, Melonrill replied slowly, to deal with the Illianer pirates and the bandits on the plains of Moredo. He was reluctant to go, of course, even for so great a responsibility, but, pardon, Lord Matt, but if the Lord Dragon sent you, how is it you don't know? Matt cut him off. I'm no lord. And this is what I was asking about in the last chapter. Did Rand send him away?
It looks like he did. He was thinking about it in the previous chapter, so most likely, yes.
It seems that way.
However, this Melonrill, he's the one who leads half the Terran Lords into the Aiel and gets slaughtered.
Yeah.
So he lasts. He gets introduced. He's introduced and slaughtered in this chapter.
And one of the first things Melonrill says to Matt is, why should we halt? I know the Lord Dragon told us to hold back, Matt, but burn my soul. There's no honor in sitting and letting the Aiel do all the fighting. Why should we be saddled with chasing them after they're broken? Because you have saddles, you dumbass. You're sitting on horses.
Right.
That's the point. The point is that the Aiel just can't move as fast over that short of a distance. You need the cavalry, what little cavalry they have, and very, very little of it do they have, to harry later, after the foot does their work.
And if you charge in now, you'll get slaughtered.
Yep.
See Exhibit B later on in the chapter.
You're not going to be hunting down one Aielman at the time. They team up and hamstring your horse, and then when you're on the ground with your broken legs, then the spear goes in your liver. Cavalry does badly against well-trained, well-equipped, disciplined foot. It always does badly. Cavalry only does good in chaos, open fields, harrying. I mean, you can do big charges with heavy cavalry, but
especially pikes.
A hedgehog made of pikes on top of it, and the horses, they'll try to get near it.
And that's one of the things that kind of bugs me about Land's charge into the Trollocs to go after Demandred. Now, I know there's the rain of arrows, but one cavalryman charging into a bunch of Trollocs would be cut down so fast.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the tactics you're using. So, like, if you use very heavy cavalry to do a charge like that, it can work, especially against undisciplined or light infantry. But
right,
if you have really heavy infantry, like these Cairhienin pikemen, you're not going to do very well. That it's what they're made for. They're made for killing you. the light or medium cavalry, unless you have a bunch of horse archers. Then you don't make contact. You just run around and shoot arrows until they're bloody and tired. Let them chase you. String them out. There's a lot of different ways that could go.
Not well for the Cairhienins.
Well, yeah, if they're getting shot at from a horse, but we don't see a ton of that in the series. The Shaidaran seem to be good at it, but I don't really see anyone else that has cavalry like that can, like, turn around and shoot over the horse's butt type thing.
I want to say, like, in Daman, they might have that technology. Don't they have good horsemanship and, like, because they have the Damani razors and stuff?
I want to say that's the case, yeah. But to be fair, the Damani are broken and starving by the time they come into the picture.
And facing Shan Chan on crazy beasts and with collar channelers.
Really heavy cavalry.
Yeah.
That their cavalry will eat your horses. That's their snack. They're riding like giant lizards and shit. Yeah.
It's the equivalent of against going up against Apache helicopters with your bow and arrow. Like, have fun with that.
If we had a giant cat that had evolved for millions of years to hunt horses, that's what the Shan Chan are riding.
I'm also thinking of like a Torokan with a channeler on its back.
No
like,
contest.
Freaking, yeah. Apache helicopter with a machine gun. Just freaking wipes out anything it sees. Just flies overhead. Oh, look, there's a target. Boom.
I mean, the Shan Chan have horse as well, but they seem to use it less. They seem much more fond of their the other beasts. They've got Grom. There's a bunch of them. We went over this in like episode 2, I think.
I kind of do wish we had more individual examples of Shan Chan beasts. We kind of see them en masse, but we rarely see the individuals hanging out with our characters. And that would be cool.
Yeah, it would really be a lot of fun to see, like, spend some time with a trainer of the Corlm or something. Corlm.
Rather than the Shreddit, which, like, we all know what elephants are, you know? Like, it would be cool if we had the similar experience with some of the other more exotic creatures.
Yeah, and which some of them we only see a couple of times, like the Corlm, which I think they're like a giant flightless bird, those ones.
I know what the Grolm are because they're the three-eyed toads that Rand encountered.
Yeah.
I know what the Rockin and the Torokan are because they're the flying beasts that we see a lot. I know the Shreddit because they're elephants and we see them a lot. But then there's the bronze cat, the scaled cat, there's the flightless bird, there's one or two others, and I get them all.
Maybe the best way to say
mixed up.
What was the animal we spent so much time catching and training in Final Fantasy VII? The bird that you can ride. And you can move way faster over the map. Chocobo, thank you. That's what Corlm are. Chocobos. Except they have vicious, nasty beaks, and they can cut your guts out with their toe claw.
Yeah, if they weren't cute. If they were actually vicious animals rather than the, cartoony things we see.
Devico, I didn't play FF12, I don't think. I played up till like 10.2, and then I kind of fell away. But in 7, there's chocobos. In 8, there's chocobos. I think in all of them. Are there chocobos in 9? This is not an important question. Yes, just like this, guys. A Corlm. Or a chocobo.
They appear as hairy, flightless birds. Their fur is usually gray, black, or brown in color. 8 feet tall, long necks, double crests on their heads. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the pictures of Corlm and chocobo, and I'm having a hard time finding the difference.
Yeah. They're like fuzzy and furred, painted dead. I imagine it that way, but it's a flightless bird that's a very fast runner. And if I remember right from researching, Kel, so like a giant emu, which in a hand-to-hand fight, I've read that emus will kick your ass. They will kick you in the chest, and your chest will break. And they're not even that heavy. Imagine if that thing was, 30% bigger. Tear you apart.
Well, it's worse than getting kicked by a horse.
Yeah? I have no idea. I don't know what I don't know anything about numbers, but I have heard that even some of the large flightless birds that exist today could kill a man, like if he tried to face it down.
Horses don't have claws.
Yeah, horses are prey animals.
Emus do.
Emus are predators. Well, I don't know about emus in particular, but some of these flightless birds. Oh God, I'm about to Google it.
I have the blue and gold macaw, and watching her tear into a chicken bone thigh is got to be one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. Because it's almost like she's designed for it, right? Like
they are. I mean, cracking nuts, but also they'll eat meat when they can.
They're omnivores. Parrots definitely are omnivores. They love meat.
Do they eat a lot of bugs in the wild? Birds like that? Bugs and small prey, like...
No, I don't know about bugs. I think it's mostly fruit and small prey, like lizards and other small birds.
That makes sense.
Probably bugs, but I honestly don't know about parrots. Yeah, that's the whole thing about ducks, is they're the universal animal. They can fly, walk, and swim. They're terrifying. They'll follow you anywhere. Ducks are coming with their dead, cold, dead eyes. Listen, geese are evil. Don't get me wrong. They're assholes. Ducks are going to take over the world.
Emus like to eat beetles, cockroaches, cotton ball moths, spiders, millipedes, fruit, grasses. We could probably live on that. Whoa, their eggs are beautiful. Okay, I'm falling down a hole. Holy shit, though. Looks like jade or something. That's amazing. Okay, all right. Okay. We're talking about Matt, though, here.
We're not. Yeah, how do we get from Matt to the eating behavior of birds?
Emus? We went from cavalry to cavalry tactics to the different types of cavalry to the Shanchan cavalry, which includes a lot of different animals. And then we started talking about Korolm, and then we started talking about emus.
The path from Matt to duck rape in
seven steps.
Seven.
Oh, God.
7 steps of duck rape. It's a new drinking game. Take any subject.
Painted Dead says this quacks me up. I just thought you would appreciate that.
I do appreciate that. But you know what? I'm just going to let it roll off my back like water off a duck.
So Matt's standing around arguing with this haughty Tairen, and he's thinking, I'm going to pick up here. The smart thing would be to let them go on with it while he headed in the opposite direction. The only trouble was that once these idiots let the Aiel know they were discovered, those Aiel might decide to do something fancy, like swinging around to take the strung-out fools in the flank. If that happened, there was no certainty that he would get clear. And then Matt tells a lie. He says to Melonrill, "What the Lord Dragon wants you to do," he told them, "is to ride ahead slowly, just as if there weren't an Aiel within 100 miles. As soon as the pikes are through the gap, they'll form a hollow square, and you will get yourselves inside it double quick." "Inside," Melonrill protested. Angry mutters rose from the other lords, except Esteon, who looked thoughtful. "There's no honor in hiding behind stinking—" "You bloody do it!" Matt roared, reining pips close to Melonrill's horse. "Or if the bloody Aiel don't kill you, Rand will, and whatever he leaves I'll chop into sausage myself." And then they do what Matt tells them to. Well, mostly.
The ones that want to live.
Some of the dumb lords go out in front anyway, but they basically execute his plans, but they take half their horse, which are mainly the leaders, and go out running toward the Aiel, trying to cut them down. And they do cut some Aiel down, but all of them die.
And that ratio sucks. Darwin at work, you know? Congratulations, you get a Darwin Award, and you get a Darwin Award, and you get a Darwin Award.
So Matt turns.
You have removed yourself from the gene pool in the dumbest possible way.
He's done screaming at the lords. He turns around and, setting the butt of his spear in his stirrup like a lance, he heeled Pips back down the column. When he glanced over his shoulder, Melonrill and the others were talking and peering after him. At least they were not herring up the valley. The commander of the pikemen proved to be a pale, slender Cairhienin, half a head shorter than Matt, and mounted on a gray gelding that looked past ready for the pasture. Darid had hard eyes, though, an off-broken nose, and 3 white scars crisscrossing his face, one of them not very old. He took off his bell-shaped helmet while he talked with Matt. The front of his head was shaved. No lord, he. Maybe he had been part of the army before the Civil War started. Yes, his men knew how to form a hedgehog. He had not faced Aiel, but he had faced brigands and Andorran cavalry. There was an implication that he had fought other Cairhienin as well, for one of the houses contesting for the throne. Darid sounded neither eager nor reluctant. He sounded like a man with a job of work to do. The column stepped off as Matt turned Pip's heads the other way. They marched with a measured pace, and a quick look showed the Terran's horses moving no faster. So they're listening to him. Matt has a lot of thoughts here. I don't want to go into too much detail and drag this out, because it's probably going to be a long episode as it is. But Matt knows that everything he does is being watched by Aiel scouts. What he's hoping is that he appears to be a messenger who has arrived, showed up, gave some orders, turns around, leaves. So he's walking away now.
And the only way he would have seen them is if he was on the ridge, which he didn't. He appeared to not be when he was approaching.
He doesn't want them to think that he's just informed the Aiel, or he's just informed the Cairhienins and Tairens of the presence of the Aiel. Otherwise, they might change their plans, and then everybody's screwed.
Yeah, it's time to spring a trap, basically. He's taking a lesson from the Nynaeve playbook. If you know it's there, prepare for it, and walk right in.
Yeah, if you know what the trap is.
And as long as you have a good hedgehog, yeah.
That's funny. 2 situations where a hedgehog works to get people out of a trap. Well, I guess in one, Perrin hurts the hedgehog, and that's what gets them out of the trap. But all right. Traps, hedgehogs, it's a thing. So, Matt's moving away, and I have 2 more reads before this chapter is over, comprising of about 2 pages, with a break in between.
It's all action, baby.
He was in the clear now, hidden from the Aiel. He could ride on. After telling this lot what was expected of them anyway, he had sent the others on into the Aiel trap. He could not simply abandon them. Talmanas of House Delavind, his con 3 yellow stars on blue, and his banner a black fox, was even shorter than Darid, and had 3 years on Mat at most. But he led those Cairhienin, although they were older and even gray hair present. His eyes held as little expression as Darid's, and he looked like a coiled whip. His armor and sword were utterly plain. Once, he had told Mat his name. The man listened quietly, while Mat laid out his plan, leaning a little out of the saddle to cut lines in the ground with the sword-bladed spear. The other Cairhienin lords gathered round on their horses, watching, but none so sharply as Talmanas. Talmanas studied the map he drew, and studied him, from boots to hat, even his spear. When he was done, the fellow did not speak until Mat barked, "Well, I don't care whether you take it or leave it, but your friends will be hip-deep in Aiel and not much longer." "The Tairens are no friends of mine, and Darid is useful. Certainly not a friend." Dry chuckles ran through the onlooking lords at the suggestion. "But I will lead one half, if you lead the other." Talmanas pulled off one steel-backed gauntlet, put out his hand, but for a moment Mat only stared at it. "Lead? Him? I'm a gambler, not a soldier. A lover." Memories of battles long gone spun through his head, but he forced them down. All he had to do was ride on. But then, maybe Talmanas would leave Estion and Darid, and the rest to roast on the spit Mat had hung them from. Even so, it was a surprise to him when he grasped the other's hand and said, "You just be there when you're supposed to be." For reply, Talmanas began calling off names in a quick voice. Lords and lordlings reigned from Mat, each followed by a bannerman, and perhaps a dozen retainers, until he had 400-odd of the Cairhienin. Talmanas did not have much to say after, either. He just led the remainder west at a trot, trailing a faint cloud of dust.
I love Talmanas' strategy there. He's like, I don't know if I can trust you, but I'll go into battle if you lead the other half of these folks, because then we're both screwed. He's like, you put flesh on the line, and I'll follow your plan. If you don't put flesh on the line, I'm going to ignore you and think you're a spy or something.
Fair enough.
I think it's pretty smart of Talmanas.
It is. Talmanas is a smart guy.
And I love this introduction. He gets a lot of personality later on, but like when you go back and read, you see just how much sarcasm he's got going on the whole time. He's a brilliant character. Very subtle, very much a straight man to Mat's buffoon in a way that just I can't wait to see. I think it's a wonderful friendship.
Talmanas is one of my favorite characters, if only because the way him and Mat play off each other.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of the best buddy cop parts of this book series is like the two of them hanging out. It's a lot of fun.
And who's the manservant later? I think the Cairhienin manservant that Mat has. Is it Lopin? It can't be.
He's got a couple of house servants. There's like 3 different ones.
The one who's just very funny to Mat. It's like, "No, my lord does not look like a pincushion." Okay, Deviko says, Naram is a Cairhienin manservant in the service of Talmanas. Lopin was the servant of Nelsian Aldiaya.
Nelesian.
Nelesian? Wow. Thanks, guys.
Nelesian is the way, yeah. Did you happen to know notice what Telmanus's banner was?
A black fox.
A black fox. Thought that was interesting. The link to Matt there as the fox that makes the ravens fly, and he's the black fox, if Matt is the red fox. Yep.
I like it too.
Sort of his shadow, you might say. The shadow that leads the band of the Red Hand.
The hill valley twisted and forked as he angled north, but he had a good sense of direction. For instance, he knew exactly which way lay south and safety, and it was not the way he was heading. Dark clouds were forming up there toward the city, the first he had seen so thick in a long time. Rain would break the drought, good for the farmers, if any remained, and settle the dust, good for the horsemen, so they did not announce themselves too early. Maybe if it rained, the Aiel would give up and go home. I loved that line. Oh, it's raining. Game's over.
Go home.
The wind was beginning to pick up too, bringing a little cool for a wonder. The sound of fighting drifted over the crests. Men shouting, men screaming. It had begun. Matt turned pips, raising his spear, and swung it right and left. He was almost surprised when the Cairhien formed into one long line to either side of him, facing upslope. The gesture had been instinctive, from another time and place, but then these men had seen fighting. He started pips up through the scattered trees at a slow walk, and they kept pace to the quiet jangle of bridles. His first thought on reaching the height was relief at seeing Telmanus and his men coming into sight on the crest across from him. His second was to curse. Darid had formed the hedgehog, spiny thickets of pikes, 4 deep, interspersed with bowmen to make a large hollow square. Long pikes made it difficult for the Shaido to get close. However, they rushed in, and the archers and crossbowmen were exchanging shots hot and fast with the Aiel. Men were falling on both sides, but the pikes simply closed in when one of their number went down, making the square tighter. Of course, the Shaido did not appear to slacken their assault either. The defenders were dismounted in the center, and maybe half of the Tairen lords with their retainers. Half. That was what made him want to curse. The rest dashed about among the Aiel, slashing and stabbing with sword and lance in knots of 5 or 10, or alone. Dozens of riderless horses told how well they were doing. Melonrill was off with only his bannermen, laying about with his blade. 2 Aiel darted in and neatly hamstrung the lordling's horse. It fell, head flailing. Matt was sure it screamed, but the din swallowed it. And then Melonrill vanished behind Caden's sword-clad figures, spears stabbing. The bannermen lasted a moment longer. Good riddance, Matt thought grimly, standing in his stirrups. He raised the sword-bladed spear high, then swept it forward, shouting, Los Cabadrin! He would have had the words back if he could, and not because they were old tongue. It was a boiling cauldron down in the valley, but whether or not any of the Cairhien understood a command of horsemen forward in the old tongue, they understood the gesture, especially when he dropped back into his saddle and dug in his heels. Not that he really wanted to, but he could not see any choice now. He had put those men down there. Some might have gotten away if he had told them to turn and run, and he just did not have a choice. Banners and con waving, the Cairhien charged downhill with him, shouting battle cries, in imitation of him, no doubt, though what he was shouting was blood and bloody ashes. Across the valley, Telmanus raced down just as hard. Sure that they had all the wetlanders penned, the Shaido never saw the others, until crashed into from behind on both sides. It was then that the lightning began to fall, and after that, things got really hairy.
And we get to see some of this battle in flashback in the next chapter. Matt sort of tells the story of what happened, but yeah.
I love this so much, especially banners and con waving, the Cairhien charged downhill with him, shouting battle cries in imitation of him, no doubt. Though what he was shouting was blood and bloody ashes. So fuck shit. Why am I doing this?
We're all gonna die.
Oh, so good. Though what he was actually yelling was curses. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Yeah, I mean, I would too. Like, oh crap, we're actually doing this.
This is his first big battle too, right? He's had a couple of he's defended himself a few times in battle, or when he's been attacked, in camp and stuff. But this is the first battle he's entered. Yeah,
mainly by Trollocs or random dark friends popping out of alleys. It's not the same as a full-scale battle like this. Fighting one guy with a knife, or even a bunch of Trollocs like we were talking about earlier, I frankly think is less scary. And I mean, that must be why all that propaganda works, where the famous World War II stuff, where, they told American soldiers that the Japanese were, barely better than monkeys and bad teeth and all that, They're monstrous, dumb things.
Dehumanizing your opponent, yeah.
Evil little creatures. That makes it easier mentally to charge against, an evil creature. That's easy to want to fight. But when you're actually... I don't have battle experience either, but certainly when I know what it's like to move into a sparring match and feel the heat and fear and uncertainty that this guy is just as strong, fast, and smart as I am. If I don't figure something out really clever, really fast, this bout's going to be over in about 10 seconds. Sometimes faster.
He does think fast and move fast.
Yeah. A real... If you ever will watch sparring matches, especially with weapons in martial arts, they end fast. Real fast.
Yeah. Real fast. Faster than I can really... It's 1-2 contacts, maybe.
Right, before someone gains a hit.
Yep. And usually... Honestly, if you're using actual sharp swords, one hit generally ends the battle.
Probably. And there's always the old rule of thumb that if you make the other guy see his own blood first, then you're going to win, probably. Likely. Because then people start to panic. I've gotten hit really hard with a blunt sword, but, bruise was the worst thing that ever happened.
Still got hurt.
Once I got wrapped right across the knuckles, it hurt for a month.
That's a long time to have something hurt.
Oh, it hit me right, across the knuckles. And it was a wooden sword, not a metal one. They say those hurt even worse because they're thinner, less impact area. But still, it would be getting hit by a 2x4 is... If another guy approximately our size was swinging it at you and you blocked with your fist. Except I was trying to parry and I just missed, and right across the knuckles. Ooh.
Right.
I do remember also that...
joints, not good. Not good.
Guy I spent a lot of time with, who gave me a lot of advice and stuff, told me that's one of the first things you have to learn how to protect your fingers, because they're out there, and there's a cross guard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that what the...
But if you're not positioning yourself just right, you can still get whapped. Right in the fingers.
This is bad.
And that old club I used to train with
the joints
barely exists anymore, but the whole philosophy behind it was you did that kind of training without gloves or anything. Because the point is, if you're getting hit in the knuckles, you're doing it wrong. And you need to learn how to not get hit in the knuckles. So maybe the pain is it's what's going to teach you.
Doctor, it hurts my knuckles every time I whack them with a 2x4.
Maybe don't get hit with 2x4s anymore.
Don't do that then.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?